are now on air.
Okay, it is now 9:30. Today is Tuesday, March 15th. This is the regular meeting of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. I call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. I now ask Director Rain Sosak to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Acknowledge that we have media present, and I'll ask now for approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I hear Director McCary. I see Director Law is second. I'd like to make one minor adjustment. I'm sorry, Director I apologize. Director Lewis seconds. I'd like to make one minor adjustment to the agenda, if people don't mind. I'd like to move the presentation number 7 of Mr. Dennis Cafferty, General Manager of El Toro Water District. I'd like to move him up to right after approval of the agenda, since he has other business he needs to attend to today. So unless I hear an objection to that, I will go ahead and make that minor adjustment. And with that, we will go ahead and approve the agenda unless I hear otherwise. Hearing no dissent, the agenda is approved. Mr. Cafferty, Donna, you can introduce him, or?
With pleasure. We're very, very pleased to have with us the General Manager of El Toro Water District, and very anxious to hear what he has to say about our water.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be excited about it after I'm done. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this morning. It is always a pleasure to speak to the third board. I do want to say and thank President Catherine Freshley and Vice President Kay Havens for being here to provide some moral support this morning. As I indicated, things are a little challenging right now. As most of you know, the El Toro Water District provides water and wastewater services to 5 cities in South Orange County, including the city of Laguna Woods, and therefore all of the Laguna Woods Village community. Providing water supply to our community is one of our primary goals and objectives, but there are growing challenges right now. Next slide, please. There we go. That'll work. So, I think it's important to recognize that the El Toro Water District, in all of the water that we supply to the community, we are solely and completely dependent on imported water supply. Unfortunately, there is a significant groundwater basin in Orange County, but we're the first agency you get to as you move south in the county that does not have any rights to that groundwater. It's just geography and geology and where our service area lies relative to where the basin actually is. So all of the water that we distribute to our customers has to be imported from hundreds of miles away, either from the State Water Project in Northern California or from the Colorado River. One of the things that the district has done over the last 10 years is made significant investments in recycled water to offset some of those potable water imports. Over the last 10 years, the district has invested north of $40 million in building 25 miles of recycled water pipeline in a tertiary treatment plant that has allowed us to convert over 2 billion gallons since 2015 of landscape irrigation water that would have been potable import that's now recycled water. Of that 2 billion gallons or so, about 1.3 billion gallons has gone directly to landscape irrigation within the third community, and about 1.6 billion gallons to Laguna Woods Village as a whole. It's really about where our treatment plant is and the users that were close to it that resulted in third being the largest beneficiary of that project. One of the additional benefits is that the recycled water is billed at a slightly lower rate than the normal irrigation water. So third has saved over $500,000 in the last 8 years or so relative to those recycled water investments. The other thing the district continues to do is work on diversification of our supply and import opportunities. Really, that's more of a reliability issue. And then I have to note that when we're talking about water conservation and the ability to deal with drought conditions, the investments the district has made in water use efficiency programs have gone a long ways. It is a very interesting business that I work in. I don't think you find a lot of places where we invest a lot of money to actively discourage people from buying the product that we sell. I don't think that works as a business model too often in other conditions. So it has been effective for us and will continue to be something we rely on to deal with the continuing drought conditions and cycles that occur in the state of California. Next slide, please. When I talked about diversifying supply, this is what we're talking about on this slide. As you can see, a number of years ago, we had a very small recycled water component, and all of our imported water came from a single place, from a single treatment plant through a single pipeline, which from a reliability standpoint was of great concern. If either that plant or pipeline failed, we would have to live off storage until it could be fixed. Since that time, we've significantly expanded our recycled water deliveries up to 17.5% based on current numbers, and that'll probably grow a little bit since the recent conversions and our Phase 2 project is fully online now. And then we've really split the import supplies into two sources. One that still comes from Metropolitan Water District, and the other that comes from the Baker Water Treatment Plant that's in Lake Forest, essentially in our backyard. So by diversifying that supply, it's a significant benefit in terms of reliability. Next slide, please. As we look at import supplies and where water comes from, especially in the state of California, we have the State Water Project, bringing water essentially from Northern California, starting at Lake Oroville. It's 740-ish miles from Lake Oroville down to Southern California. So it's a combination of pumping plants, the California aqueduct, but it all relies on the source of supply, which really is snowpack and runoff and snow melt in the Sierras. This particular year, and the water that's delivered from the State Water Project to Metropolitan Water District, our supplier, is based on something they call Table A, and it has a whole list of percentages of how much water can be delivered from the State Water Project. At the start of this water year, and water year really starts in October. The water year is defined as October to September. At the start of the water year, the allocation of water from the State Water Project to Metropolitan Water District was exactly zero. Since we had great rains in December, they've increased that to all of 15%, meaning Metropolitan Water District is going to get about 286,000 acre feet out of the 1.9 million that they would normally rely on. Most of that water is going to areas in metropolitan service area that they can't serve from anything else. So really here in our area, we're relying more on water coming from the Colorado River. Met's getting about 1 million acre feet from the Colorado River in 2022. So the ability to bring water and convey it through the state has a lot of challenges. And we started off in a rough condition. Next slide, please. Lake Oroville, one of the largest reservoirs in California. Unfortunately, when we started the water year, it was at a historic low level. We had great weather in December. So there was a lot of runoff into Lake Oroville. Currently, it's sitting at about 46% of its capacity. But we've had very little rain in January and February, so unless we get significant additional precipitation through the rest of this year, there's nothing to increase storage or the amount of water in Oroville, which is going to further constrain the ability to deliver water through the State Water Project. Next slide, please. Similarly, when we look at the Colorado River system, Lake Powell is at 25% of its capacity. The issues on the Colorado River continue to decline as they have over the last couple decades, really. You can see on the slide, the Lake Powell is at 3 million acre feet less than where it was at this time last year. So the conditions have not gotten any better. Next slide, please. Similarly, Lake Mead is about 34% capacity. And of particular note, this very recently, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation declared a water shortage at Lake Mead based on a trigger of hitting the certain level 1 shortage level. I think it's about, well, as an elevation, it's about 1,075 feet. But the important thing is that triggered certain cutbacks on use of water from the Colorado River. They don't yet affect the state of California. But if we get to the level 2 shortage, then it will. And as you can imagine, having constrained supplies from the State Water Project, and then if we also have to have cutbacks on the Colorado River, we're left with not a whole lot of options. Next slide, please. So as we continue then to look at what drives some of these conditions. Next, please. Precipitation in the state has been, it always is cyclical, it's always variable, and we're seeing a weird pattern this year. What's called the 8-station index is sensors in 8 locations up in Northern California. And as you can see on this slide, we had a good October. We had a great December, which left everybody kind of enthusiastic and encouraged about the water year. And then January and February came. Two months that we typically depend on significant precipitation and snowfall in order to build up the snowpack in the Sierras that ultimately will run off to replenish supplies. We didn't get weather in January and February. And what happens hereafter for the rest of the water year is yet unknown. We're sitting at about 90% of normal right now, but you can see the gray background area, that's average. So given the lack of precipitation in January and February, that tracking of precipitation is now slid below average, and if we don't get more weather, it's only going to get worse relative to our average conditions. Therein lies the problem. We started off at a low level, and it's not getting any better. Next slide, please. Keep going. This one is really kind of tells the tale of the cycles we're seeing. We were in a horrific drought going through about 2016. Come 2017, as you can see on the top line, was one of the wettest years on record. Did a wonderful job of refilling reservoirs. In fact, you probably all recall the issues that happened at Lake Oroville with the spillway. That was about the time that the reservoir was it was full for all intents and purposes. 2018 was a little below average, but not terrible. 2019, another very good year. Then came 2020. And then 2021. Both years, two of the driest years we've had on record. And then we look at where we are in 2022, that slid below average, and even if we get average conditions for the rest of the year, one more, we're still below average. And if we don't get more precipitation, we're going to track somewhere near where we were in 20 and 2021. And 3 dry years in a row obviously paints a very dire picture for water supply in the state of California. Looking at the Colorado River Basin, one more click, please. They're hanging in around average, but as we've talked about, at Lake Powell and Lake Mead, we're so far below where we would like to be in terms of reservoir levels. Average doesn't help us. We need significantly exceed average for years in order to replenish supplies in those reservoirs. Next slide, please. One of the things that really benefits us in Southern California is a long-standing investment by Metropolitan Water District, funded by all of us, to store water for conditions just like we're facing. Next slide, please. So what it allows us to do in periods of drought, when we are not having the amount of water we need from the State Water Project and have concerns in the Colorado River Aqueduct system, is the ability to take water out of storage to bridge that gap. In 2021, Met took about 600,000 acre-feet out of storage. And you can see on this slide what happened in the drought conditions in 2015 and 16 and how low that storage got. It was replenished when we got more precipitation in 17, 18, and even into 2020. But now they're having to draw on storage again. Next slide, please. They're projecting, assuming that 15% Table A deliveries from the State Water Project, that they'll have to draw another 400,000 acre-feet out of storage in 2022. Storage is a bank account. If you keep taking water out without having the ability to put it back in, at some point it runs out. So this is an important asset for Southern California to deal with the short-term conditions, but it can't last forever. And we just don't know what conditions we're dealing with. Is this the beginnings of, or is it just another cycle that's going to go for a couple of years, or is it the beginning of the worst drought we've ever seen? It's difficult to say. Next slide, please. So looking kind of more at the state, next slide, please. You can see, keep going. In October of 2019, the 94% of the state was in what they call both extreme and severe drought conditions. Then we got a bunch of rain in December. And come February of 2015, it was down to 1%. That's the kind of swings we see, at least in how they measure. This is what they call a drought monitor. One more, please. And one more. Currently, given that we haven't had any precipitation following what happened in December, now it's creeping back up. 13% of the state is in what they call extreme and severe drought. And you can see us down in Orange County in kind of a moderate condition. But again, that is measuring what the drought conditions look like relative to precipitation in the particular area. It doesn't matter how much it rains here. All rain does for us here is hopefully encourage people not to turn their sprinklers on, those that are paying attention. Not everybody does. I left when it rained one day last week. As I left, neighbor across the street, sprinklers were running as water was falling out of the sky. I shook my head and kept going. But it doesn't help us for overall water supply. We really need the precipitation in Northern California. Next slide, please. We've been dealing with this for a long time. In 2015, the state issued requirements to water districts and water agencies all over the state to cut back usage based on the drought that was happening then. El Toro Water District was required to cut back by 24% at the time. Interestingly, when the very first month that we got that requirement, we got to 22% cutback. We were pretty proud of ourselves. The state immediately said, "We're not impressed. We told you 24, not 22." They were very serious about hitting those numbers. We got there, and then we're very happy to say that we have sustained that reduction. When you look at the bar on the far right, that total savings, that's from that period all the way through today. The district remains at 24% water usage, less to the benchmark, which was the 2013 calendar year. Although it's important to note, of that 24%, 14% was potable water reductions by our customers. All the residents in our entire service area did a good job of cutting back. But the other 10% was the result of significant conversions to recycled water. So if we had not made the investments at the time we did in the recycled water systems, we would have struggled significantly to get to that 24%. Next slide, please. We created a similar kind of chart to show where third stands in a kind of a similar comparison relative to the 2013 calendar year. And there has been significant reductions in third. The blue is pure potable reductions, and the purple is the result of the recycled water system. So when you look at the cumulative savings going back from 2014 through today, third's using about 36% less water than it did in 2013. About 3/4 of that is because of water that's been shifted to recycled water. About 1/4 of those savings, or 8% of the 36, is just reductions on what otherwise would have been potable usage. Now, I will say that that's a kind of a skewed relationship, because a lot of the ability to use less potable is people adjusting their irrigation habits. Because so much of third's irrigation is now recycled, there is less irrigation on potable remaining in third to help to accomplish potable reductions. So it relies more on reductions of water indoors than outdoors. But 36% from 2013 is still an impressive number. Next slide, please. So looking at where we go from here and how we deal with these conditions going forward, one of the things the district is currently in the process of doing is updating its water shortage contingency plan. The water shortage contingency plan is basically a roadmap to what we do at different levels of drought conditions. The new plan will have 6 different shortage levels, range in increments of 10%, going up to 50% and above. And it'll talk about things that we can do at each, response actions at each different level, communication protocols on how we get word out to all of our customers on things that we need to do, or different actions that we're taking. The board's going to be considering adoption of our revised plan at the board meeting next week. Next slide, please. The plan, I also defined certain requirements that already exist, and it's what we call permanent mandatory prohibitions or conservation requirements that isn't tied to different drought conditions. It's just kind of the baseline. So on irrigation, it's things like don't water when it's raining, don't water in the middle of the afternoon. On outdoor stuff, it's things like avoiding hosing down sidewalks and driveways. Use a positive shutoff nozzle if they're washing a car. And then on the commercial side, it's restaurants only bringing water when people ask for it. Hotels only doing laundry on towels and linens when it's requested. So there's a number of things that are kind of the baseline. Next slide, please. But there's a lot more that everybody can do, and this is the kind of message we're trying to communicate to our customers. So it's a lot about not running water unnecessarily. So turn water off when people are brushing teeth and shaving. Fill up a sink to wash dishes rather than just continuously running the water. Running washing machines and dishwashers when they're full. All habit-changing things that we're asking people to do. It's difficult because we've been communicating those messages for a long time, and a lot of that stuff is already being done in a large part of our community. That's how we got to that 24% reduction. So trying to increase on top of that, and the state of California has asked for a 15% reduction across the board. That was what the governor was asking for. And we've actually had one of our board members asked at a meeting he was at, saying, well, let me get this right. We're already 24% below where we were based on what you asked for. Now you're asking for 15. So that's on top of the 24 we already did? Their simple answer was yes. That's exactly what we want you to do. So that means 40%. It gets more and more difficult. The state is looking at indoor water use standards that would reduce the per capita usage from, per person from 55 gallons per person per day down to as low as 42. That's another 25% reduction just on what we're doing indoors. I'm not going to get into my questions about how effective that might be, given how there's only about 10% of the water in the state of California that's actually being used indoors. So significant impacts on people without a huge benefit to water use. But be that as it may, everything that we can do to encourage water use reductions by all of our residents is important to how we deal with these drought conditions. Next slide, please. A couple others. Again, it's that using a broom instead of a hose. Water, when waiting for water to heat up. I like the picture on the bottom left where someone's trying to catch it in a bucket and then maybe go dump it on potted plants. It's all about, can we maximize the efficiency of the water we're using indoors as opposed to letting it run down a drain for no reason. Next slide, please. The district has a number of rebate programs to incentivize water use efficiency. Indoor for things like high efficiency washing machines, dishwashers, toilets. Outdoor rebates for things like smart timers and different irrigation technology. And then commercial rebates, again, it's both the indoor and the outdoor. And then the turf removal program, encouraging people to take very water-hungry lawns and turf out and put in more drought-tolerant type landscaping. Next slide, please. The district website defines a whole slew of different resources and has a lot of information about water use efficiency, all the rebates we've been talking about. So I encourage everybody who's interested to take a look, and our staff's always there to answer questions or provide information about rebates and about everything else that we've been talking about. Like I say, we're in a difficult situation. I don't know how much longer this particular drought is going to last. We are doing everything we can to try and manage, and really it's kind of the hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And the cooperation that we've always seen from the Laguna Woods Village community on paying attention to water supply and water use efficiency is something we greatly appreciate. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions? Director Franco.
Are we producing enough reclaimed water that we can consider the change and moving Gate 11 over to reclaimed water? I understand that the amount we produce is the controlling factor.
So it is a factor. I would say at this point in time, one of the other factor that might even, what I would probably call the more significantly controlling factor, is simply dollars and cents. We have looked at the next potential phase of expansion of recycled water, what we would call a phase 3 project. And we've essentially picked the low-hanging fruit. The systems we've already put in, again, we've spent over $40 million on recycled systems over the last 10 years. And the next systems are going to be more expensive because they're further away from the plant. They're not going to be as easy to build as the last ones. And right now, the district has some very significant capital projects that we have to build. One of the benefits that our entire community has is a 275 million gallon reservoir that provides water supply in the event of an interruption in our import supplies. From a reliability standpoint, it's critical. It has a floating cover and a liner. Both have reached the end of their useful service life and need to be replaced. That's a $22 million project. From a couple other water supply projects and some commitments on the wastewater side, we just issued revenue bonds to fund $25 million worth of capital projects that adding another, and we took a look at what a phase 3 project might look like, and if I remember correctly, the numbers we were talking about was another $17 million. So that kind of becomes the challenge. The water supply issue, we have to be careful that we don't overcommit recycled water distribution to a point where we don't have enough water coming into the plant. As we've really paid attention to the systems that we already have in place, I think that might become manageable, but we've got to find the money to build a system like that. And trying to find grant money, we've really looked at opportunities for funding that a lot of that money, and I don't know what happens with some of the infrastructure money that might be coming, but it's not something that we have said can never happen, but it's something we're looking at when it's feasible.
Thank you.
Okay, any other directors' questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much for the report, for the information. It's clearly not necessarily good news, but it's certainly important news for people to have and to understand. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, we will now go to approval of the minutes. We do not need to approve the February 4th minutes. We approved them the last time we met. We have the February 15th, the February 22nd, and the March 4th minutes. I'd like to take all three as one. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Director Rain Sotzak, and the second is Director Wayne. I want to just share that on the February 15th minutes, Kush Bada should be listed as excused. On the February 22nd minutes, Annie McCary should be listed as excused. And on the March 4th minutes, Kush Bada should be listed as excused. Those are the only corrections that I have related to the minutes. They're minor. Are there any other comments or suggestions related to the minutes? Hearing, Director Laws.
I have some procedural questions. When we identify changes, is it the expectation that those changes would be put into some minutes and posted on the website is corrected?
I believe they're put into today's minutes,
Okay.
and those corrections are listed in the minutes from today's meeting.
Okay. So if we were to go back to next week, say to the February 15th minutes on the web page, would it say that Kush Bada has been excused?
It should say, yes,
Okay.
it should say.
And who-
Because those minutes will now are being approved today
Got it.
as part of today's minutes, and those corrections will show up in today's minutes as it relates to those specific locations.
And who's responsible for making those changes? I only ask because I'm looking at the minutes from February 15th. There was a change to the January 18th board meeting. I happened to be looking at those on the website yesterday, and those changes weren't there. So I was just confused and making sure. So it just sounds like there was a process, so maybe something was missed.
Yes, I'll follow up with
Okay.
Catherine. She makes sure that
Great,
everything's
great.
enacted.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
That's all I had.
All right? Now, are there any other discussion related to the minutes with those three minor adjustments to them? Hearing none, I will go ahead then and consider the minutes approved with those three minor changes, unless I hear dissent. Hearing no dissent, minutes are unanimously approved. Report of the chair. I have some information to share with you that has the potential to benefit all members, and I'd like to start with a slide, please. This slide was sent out. You got the slide, Michaela? This slide was sent out as part of a weekly email, and I thought it was important that everybody understand. Where your dollars and cents are going in terms of the monthly assessment that you pay. And while this slide might have been a little bit confusing for people to follow, we have the next slide, which breaks it down in terms of each of the categories. And what this shows you is the green is the money that Third receives, that it uses, and how it is allocated, and the orange is the GRF allocation. Remember that the GRF allocation of the $772 a month that you pay, GRF is $217.50 of that allocation. And this is the breakdown of how it actually works. And I just wanted to share that with everyone so that people had a better sense. And if you'll notice on the bottom far right of the chart, it says GVA LH21 surcharge. That's specific to individuals who live in the GVA and LH21 buildings. That is on top of the $772 per month that's paid because those things are specific to those buildings. All right? Moving along. I want to share with you, thank you, you can take the slide down. The members of your board, after careful review of the CC&Rs, specifically Article 10, have determined that we can expedite the variance process by allowing the Architectural Control and Standards Committee to approve the variance. This means they no longer need to be sent to the full board for approval, thereby having the potential to save between 30 and possibly as many as 60 days' time for approval. This is something that came up at the last architectural meeting in discussion. It was then taken to the full board in an informal way and discussed at the agenda prep meeting, and the board seemed to agree that Article 10 of the CC&Rs was very clear that the Architectural Committee can approve all variance requests. They do not need to come to the board. So from that point forward, we're taking those steps. In addition, the Architectural Committee is going to meet this Friday, the 18th, to review variances. This is not a regularly scheduled meeting, but instead is a special meeting of the Architectural Committee. The Architectural Committee has been in full agreement that we need to move as many variances through the process as possible, as quickly as possible. And to do that, we're calling periodic special meetings of the committee, and they'll be open meetings, and they'll be properly noticed so that we can approve variances rather than have them wait a month or so till the next Architectural Committee meeting. So at this point, we plan to continue offering the opportunity for special meetings of the Architectural Committee, specifically to review variance requests. And for this coming Friday, we have 4 variance requests before us that the committee will be considering for approval. In addition, the Architectural Control and Standards Committee is working with manner alterations to increase the number of variance requests that can be handled simply as over-the-counter mutual consents. This has been an issue that we have been discussing, and we're trying to make progress in terms of removing things from full variance concept into just a mutual consent over the counter. So that's an ongoing project. In terms of the insurance, we are now entering the beginning of the renewal process for our property insurance. Remember, June 1st becomes the date that we have to renew our property insurance, so we've already started that process. We are once again working with A.J. Gallagher, who serves as our broker. As you know, our property insurance premiums jumped each of the past few years, in part because of the reevaluation of the property, the separation from United, and also the large insurance increases demanded by the insurance industry. On the good news side, the third board believes it is properly planned when developing the budget for 2022, and we have enough in the operating budget to cover the cost of insurance, and therefore believe that insurance will not have any impact on the HOA fee for any additional impact on the HOA fee for 2023. All right, and the last thing I'd like to share with you is that the next town hall is March 23rd. As usual, we will be in Clubhouse 2, the Sequoia Room, from 3 to 5, and we hope that many of you will join us, as I and 1 or 2 other board members will be available to answer your questions. All righty. We now move to the update by the VMS Board Director, Raquel Unger. She is on Zoom. If Raquel, are you available?
She was just on, and now she is no longer on Zoom. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Okay, Raquel, if you turn on your mic, we're ready for your report on VMS.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, well, sorry about the technical difficulty. I'm going to give the VMS update, and I want to start with that VMS is committed to excellent, dedicated to service, and results-oriented outcomes. It's enhancing customer service experience, quality of life for all who live in the village. On March 22nd, we are going to do a strategic plan update, and the participants are representatives from VMS, GRF, mutual boards, department heads, specific emphasis is service delivery enhancement, and perform SWOT analysis. And that is how strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats may impact village and VMS. We're going to review 3-year goals and establish new 6-month action items. There is a new format for the departmental presentations. The board features board member questions and performance indicated. Question examples: how are rodent issues are handled in the community? When weekend emergencies with property damage occur, how does landscaping coordinate with security and maintenance and construction for timely follow-up? What is the benefit of new irrigation system versus adjusting run times on existing system? Presentations occur in open session first Wednesday each month of the VMS board meeting at 9:30 a.m. This is a chart of the 530 grounds maintenance key tickets between 2018 and 2021. I'm only going to run through a few of them that are quite amazing. Lawn repair in 2021, we did 1,090. Sidewalks cleaned, 263. Shrubs pruned, 1,391. Shrubs replaced, 896. And shrubs treated, 407. And as you can see, it differs in each year of what VMS has to do and how they're taking care of all the key tickets for the grounds maintenance. Coin service started yesterday. Coin distribution service provides residents with laundry quarters. It started, as I said, yesterday. It's $10 rolls available that residents can purchase in the community center recreation office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday only. And it's one $10 roll limit per resident. Please, 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 please pay with exact paper currency, 2 $5 bills or one $10 bill. That is all that will be accepted. The next one that I have, which is the new bulky item program, is starting Monday, March 21st, which dispose of unwanted items weekly. No third Saturday collection, no call to resident services necessary. There will be 5 collection areas with designated weekday collection. Place items by shared trash enclosure or on curb where personnel trash recycling carts are collected before 8 a.m. on area collection day. Prohibited. Please do not bring car parts, construction, demolition, hazardous waste, items not safely loaded or unloaded into vehicle by 2 people. Contact CR&R. CR&R is the waste program, the waste recycle people we're using. They are excellent. They service about 3 million people in between Orange County, LA, and San Bernardino. Their phone number is 949-625-6735. Or you can email them at lagunawoods-recycles@crrmail.com. The other contacts that I'd like to give you are maintenance and construction, landscaping. Please contact Resident Services at vmsinc.org. Requests not department specific, please contact info@lagunawoodsvillage.com. And of course, your mutual board representatives are always there for you. I'd like to thank the board for giving VMS this opportunity to make the presentation. And I want to thank all the board members for their work, effort, and time that they put into the community.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Unger. Appreciate that. Moving along in terms of the agenda, we're up to the open forum. At this time, members only may address the Board of Directors regarding items not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of this Board of Directors. The Board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted for the open forum to 30 minutes. A member may speak only once during the forum. Speakers may not give their time to other people. No audio or video recording by attendees, and no rude or threatening comments. Members can attend the meeting by joining us at Zoom or by calling 669-900-6833, or they can email meeting@vms.org to have your message read during the open forum. We're now ready for people who are in the audience. Michaela, would you call the first person, please?
We have Jules Zalon, Manor 3124-A.
Good morning. I'm here to announce my candidacy for one of the board seats should the recall succeed. This is a bit presumptuous because it presumes the seats will actually be open. So in a way, it's an example of like the tail wagging the dog, because the only thing that matters is the recall to succeed, right? If it fails, how silly it will seem to have campaigned for something that never existed in the first place. But watch out, because for the next few months, most of what you will be hearing from so-called authorities is why you should want to elect this candidate or that candidate for a seat that's not even open yet. That's like the receiver who runs before he catches the ball, a mistake familiar to all football fans. I won't campaign for a seat before it actually opens up. Instead, I'll campaign for the one thing that got me to create the recall petition in the first place. I'll spend my energy telling you why we should vote yes on the recall, why, despite the truly admirable amount of time Rob and Lynn have spent working on our behalf, it's time to replace them with new directors with a fresh view of how the mutual should run, how the mutual must run. And the simple answer is we need an independent board that makes up its own mind, not one dominated by an unelected, uncreative lawyer who quadrupled our legal budget, wasted hundreds of thousands on vanity and frivolous projects, regularly gave directives, not advice, take it from a lawyer, me, that's not our job, and emasculated a decades-old practice of transferring unusable common area to members who would develop it and thus add to the value of their and their neighbors' manors, and spent much energy punishing members for imagined, non-existent offenses. My two North Stars are truth and logic. I promise I will tell you the truth, even when it hurts. I only ask in return that you listen to the warring arguments on both sides and use your good sense, your logic, to separate the wheat from the chaff. Thanks to the landslide victory of Lewis, Laws, and Clark this past October, the board consists of 4 truly independent directors. A successful recall could add the 2 we need to gain a board majority and a real opportunity to change direction. Let's not waste this chance. Thank you.
Next speaker is Chris Collins, Manor 3306Q.
Good morning, Chris Collins, 3306Q. I'm here with an update on the work of the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village on behalf of village residents who are experiencing temporary financial crisis. 25 years and still going strong. Silver anniversaries are special, and the foundation is no exception. The Foundation of Laguna Woods Village will be celebrating the 25th anniversary this year, having begun in May of 1997. This milestone is really a tribute to the village, which has sustained it and made it possible, making our motto, which is neighbors helping neighbors, a reality. In fact, Laguna Woods Village is unique in the creation and continuation of its own homegrown charity, which focuses on the needs of village residents. As to the foundation's start, the story which has been handed down from board to board relates that there was a heavy rain and flooding during the 1996-97 period, which damaged a number of manors. At the encouragement of our social services department, some very caring residents got together and arranged to give money to those people in the community needing aid in packing and moving as a result of the rain. This group of donors realized that they had fulfilled a very important need in the village and decided to formalize the arrangement. Hence, in 1997, they established an organization and called it the Foundation. More recently, though, through the support of the village, the Foundation has spent over $1.2 million to ensure the well-being of the village over the past 5 years. Among its traditional services, the Foundation provides funding for Meals on Wheels, Alzheimer's Day Service scholarships, and individual resident financial assistance. More recently, the Foundation supported the village's vaccination effort, and before the pandemic, helped fund a fall prevention program in the village. We welcome your input. If you have suggestions about needs which could be addressed by the Foundation, please contact us. That's the Foundation at 949-268-2246 or the Foundation at comline.com. And for more information about the Foundation, how we achieve our motto, which is Neighbors Helping Neighbors, please go to our website, which is thefoundationoflagunawoodsvillage.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Lisa Mills, Manor 3289C.
I'm not sure if I should address you under the open forum or on item 13A. I don't know how the process works. It's my first time here.
If you are addressing the
Consent
revised
calendar.
alteration fee,
Yes.
that should wait until we get to that particular item.
Thank you.
And we'll be happy to have you speak then.
Carrie Eckert, Manor 3374C.
Hello, and thank you for listening to me. I came here to speak this morning regarding the issue that President Mochinek, sorry if I pronounce it wrong, just spoke about regarding the issue some of us have been having dealing with trying to get basic alterations done without waiting many months and having a lot of aggravation to us. I thank you very much for speeding up this process. As I was sitting here this morning waiting to speak, I just found out that one of our issues was handled over the counter. So I thank the board members who listened to me last month to get this pushed through. Really greatly appreciate it. But since I'm here, I do have one question. And I might not get an answer today, but at some point soon I hope to get an answer. My question is regarding the current Common Area Use Policy, 03-18-146. My question is, what happened in May of 2018, whereas the board met with their attorney, and by that majority vote, it was decided that the board won't be granting any requests for land that extended beyond the original footprint of the manor, including patios. I know for decades it's been allowed, and I'm just wondering what incident or entity decided to change that long-standing allowances. Anyway, again, thank you very much for listening to my request from before. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have Susan Smallwood, Manor 3456B.
Good morning. As to the third occupancy extra fee, would you prefer that I speak at that time? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be happy to hear it then.
All right. At the last architectural committee meeting, and I'm pleased to hear that Ms. Eckert has finally received the ability to go forward with her courtyard patio. I was somewhat dismayed when, after I spoke and handed Mr. Doncost the legal opinion that was given by Ms. Gottlieb as to our courtyard patio to be able to move forward. Now, Ms. Eckert can now move forward, but there were several other residents who were denied in the last several months. What will happen to them? Will they be contacted? Will they be told so that they no longer will have any anger or resentment for being turned down when so many people have been allowed to improve their courtyard? Lastly, sellers are having to remove prior extensions of their patio when they are in escrow. And one was a Navarro with a T-shaped patio, and the prior owner had extended it. And there was a patio that extended completely over the now extended concrete patio. And in that unit has two sliding doors, and the original would end up right smack in the middle of each sliding door. Now, current city code is that a cement pad needs to be full across the sliding door. Why are we making our new residents or sellers to remove something that was to make their manor more usable, more friendly, and quite frankly, safer to use? So I hope you will revisit some of these items. And I know they were told that the permit could not be found, but when we were going through our process, I was told by the city of Laguna Woods that a lot of the permits were not transferred over and they may be missing. And also, I know when I was helping another resident right at the ransomware, nobody could find her documentation. Well, we need to take a really common sense approach. If those documents are lost, then we really need to take a look at what people are being made to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Brian Gilmore, Manor 5176.
Thank you. That's Brian with the I see on that. I want to talk to you about security services, and I see Mr. Rojas is back there. Last weekend we had a breach of security access in the gate. 3 times someone drove up in front of our house and stopped. One person even got out of the car and took a picture. Okay? Now, I'm making these comments not to poke anyone in the eye here, but so that we could have better security, better in improvement. This is a 3rd incident. So, you know, we don't live in a gated community, have a porous gate. On top of that, I know security has come out and asked me questions based upon a false accusation, and that's conducting an investigation. So my request here is that security keeps to their core function, and you look on your website, gate access is major, is right there. I have videos here, and I sent them over to security. And Mr. Caressa, very excellent officer, really appreciate the night he came out. I sent them to him, or from a blink system I put up on the basis of advice from an Orange County sheriff because of harassment. Now, I sent them out. I also called the Orange County sheriff. And what the Orange County sheriff told me is that for the money we pay here, we should know what went on. That's what the Orange County sheriff told me. So I'm asking, is this a threat? Who are these people? Why are they taking pictures of my house? My wife has been abused by the judicial system in another state. She's thrown judges out of office. She's got lawyers disbarred. We do have a belief that people are after her for that. So I would like to know who those people are. Okay, your camera readers, your readers at the gate have that information. When I was a board member, I saw the license plate numbers coming in and out of the gates. And I know you can get them, you have them, you can track them. That's verified by the sheriff that they have a system where you can look up the license plate of the car and they tell you everything about it. I don't know what sort of system we have, but there is one that will record every license plate because I've seen the data. Thank you.
Thank you.
June Gilmore Manor, 5176.
Thank you for giving me opportunity to speak here. English is not my native language. I have a heavy accent, so I hope I try to speak as much slow, so everybody can understand. If you do not understand, please let me know. As my husband, Dr. Gilmore, already explained to you, I came here to speak with you two things. One of them is landscape. Another thing is security. I was, before came to this place, because of security. I was previous, another state, corrupt lawyer, opposite lawyer, and corrupt police invaded my house without warranty. They try, I self-published, corrupt. This corrupt lawyer tried to kill me, tried to arrest me, but they threatened me so many times. They follow me, try to kill me. But most people, especially, I am middle of 70, almost. If I was scared, just like old people, then I didn't go forward. But I taught taekwondo 16 years. Myself and I taught 7 years to my student. One of it is taekwondo is not attack, defense. My student, you want to learn taekwondo, somebody you kill, tried is attack in the heat, then get out my class. And then you write, never give up. Yes. They scared me, they tried to kill me. I didn't give up. That time, I said, I was give up my life to fighting this corruption. Now, 3 people is there.
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up.
How come they are front people is more than 3 minutes?
No, nobody's had more than 3 minutes. Everybody's been kept to 3 minutes.
You know, your house, I'm CEO.
Thank you.
I asked them, your
Miss Gilmore,
house is break like
Miss Gilmore, thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Your house is break neighbor.
Miss Gilmore, thank you very much. Please. Miss Gilmore, Miss Gilmore, Miss Gilmore, thank you. Your time is up. Miss Gilmore, please.
Felonies neighbors.
Michaela, we have anybody else?
No, we have more speakers, but for specific
Or
items.
specific to the agenda items?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. In terms of responses, anybody have anything they want to respond to? Ms. Eckert, the change in common property issues, we'll get back to you on that in terms of when it happened and why it happened. In terms of Mr. Gilmore and the porous gate issue, the security, we'll check with Director Rojas and see what he has to say about that. And in terms of Ms. Smallwood's comments related to people who may have been turned down recently for their courtyard enclosures and the improvements, we'll certainly take a look at that because you know that I personally, I'm in agreement with you as to that issue. And if there have been some that have been denied in the recent past, we certainly should go back and rectify that situation. Okay? Anybody else? All right, moving along. CEO report.
Thank you, honorable members of the board. I want to start by briefly reiterating some key points about the new bulky item collection program. I know Director Unger touched on it, but I just wanted to be clear that on Monday, March 21st, residents will now be able to dispose of unwanted items on a weekly basis. The date for pickup depends on in which zone you live. There are 5 collection areas that are designated for the weekday collection. And to be clear, the collection day is based on your building number. And we have flyers in the back that detail the collection schedule by building number. And it's also available on the website under the news tab. For instance, if you reside in building 1 through 125, your collection day would be Tuesday. If you reside in buildings 126 through 232, your collection day would be on Monday, for example. But again, that information is available on the village website under the news tab. And for those who are here this morning, there are flyers in the back which details that information. I also wanted to mention that the security director recruitment is ongoing. If you'll recall, I promoted Director Rojas to Director of Operations as part of our realignment. And so we've been recruiting for a security director. There are several highly qualified candidates. And yesterday, a panel consisting of board members from each corporation interviewed the candidates. They identified 4 top candidates who will now go on through the rest of the process. And this includes interviews with the department head team, and then a final interview with me and our Director of Operations, Carlos Rojas. So that is very good news. And then lastly, I wanted to remind residents that they're invited to celebrate spring and Easter at the Equestrian Center. This happens on Saturday, April 16th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Children can enjoy Easter egg hunts, a petting zoo, bounce houses, crafts, and airbrush artists. The parking is available on the lot off of Via Campo Verde. There will be shuttle service between 8:45 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. And any interested resident can contact our Recreation Department for additional information. And I'll conclude with that this morning. Thank you.
Any questions for the CEO? No, thank you very much. All right, we'll move now to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are recommended for action by committees and will be enacted by the board by one motion. In the event an item is removed from the consent calendar by members of the board, such items shall be subject to further discussion and action by the board. We have 3 items. We have A, B, and C on here. Yes, Director Jarrett.
We need to make a correction, please, on 12B.
12B.
12B, page 1 of 2. The correction is the name of the street is Bahia Blanca West. That's 3320B, Bahia Blanca West.
Just 12B. Let me get to it in my...
It was incorrectly noted. That's Carrizo.
12B, it says it's 3320B Via Carrizo, and you're saying the address is?
Bahia Blanca West.
So it's 3320B Bahia Blanca West?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All righty. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar, please?
Don't we get to speak before you vote for an item?
On the consent calendar? No. That's, we're not on 13, we're on 12. Okay. No problem. We're on the consent calendar. Get a motion to approve the consent calendar, please.
I so move.
Director Jarrett moves. Second is Director McCary. All right. All those in favor of the consent calendar, I'll assume by consent then that the consent calendar is approved unless I hear otherwise. Hearing no dissent, consent calendar is approved. We will now move to 13, an unfinished business, and the first item on there is to entertain a motion to approve a revised alteration fee schedule. Director Jarrett, would you like to please read the motion?
Yes, one moment, please. The motion is to approve a revised alteration fee schedule, and this was read last month's meeting, and it has passed its 28-day notification and has been satisfied, according to civil code.
Okay. Ms. Mills, if you would like to now speak about this motion, then we'll open it up to the board discussion.
Okay. And I have an item. Thank you for your time. It's my first time speaking before the board. My name is Lisa Mills. I currently reside at 3289C Santa Amadeo. I thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I have been a city council member of a very large city in Orange County and the CEO of the Orange County Transportation Authority. So I understand what it takes to make decisions like you're having to make as a volunteer and the staff in terms of implementing these tough decisions. I've also done major remodeling work in my past home, and I've helped many residents in Laguna Woods Village get permits over the last 10 years. I'm also currently undergoing a very significant remodel in my own home, or future home here in Laguna Woods, and I was subject to that very lengthy variance process, so I appreciate you reducing the time for future residents. On behalf of the residents, we request that you do not approve this item for a fee increase. I have given you a handout, and I'm sorry I'm the one that prepared this handout, but I did show the fees to the city staff as well as the HOA staff. If you see here, your current increases are going to significantly impact the residents here in the village. If you look down to HVAC, which is heating and air conditioning system, the HOA fee in the future will be 4 to 5 times higher than a city permit fee. I don't think that's your intention. This system is very broken. I have to tell you, from my history, the way this works, it's just not right. Our residents here who are older, more frail, have less money maybe in some cases, are asked to go through a very tough process. I'm going to use a water heater as an example. You submit an HOA permit. You wait 1 to 2 weeks. You then come here and pay a permit fee, or they call you. Then you walk to the city, get another permit, pay a fee, then get an inspection, and then you make us walk back to the HOA or email back into the city, to the HOA. If I lived on the outside, which I did, I just went to the city hall once. I never had to go anywhere else, and I only paid 1 fee. So here it's very, very expensive. Your staff is good. I have no complaints about the staff. In fact, you have some of the most talented people here with Siobhan, who I love, and Manuel Gomez, who is also outstanding. These people understand how cities work. So I know I'm running out of time, but many residents are doing the work without a permit anymore because it's cheaper and it's faster. So I think you need to relook at this whole system. Don't raise our fees because it's going to be very costly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also am willing to help work with the staff or a board member to figure out the process. I don't want to come up here and just complain because I think I know how things can work, and I'm available to help. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
We do
board-
have a couple of other speakers as well.
Oh, we have other speakers on
Yes.
this issue?
Yep.
Please.
We have Judith McCourt, Manor 3465.
Good morning, members of the board, Mr. President. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. Like Lisa Mills, my colleague and friend, I have been deputy director of a very large public organization here in Orange County, and also am currently president of a corporation, so I currently work full-time. I'm here today to address 13A on behalf of myself and other residents of the community. This morning we heard about the critical state of water, for example. We all know that we're in an energy crisis. It goes without saying these are very challenging times for all of us. And financially, with the cost of inflation, for many people around fixed incomes, it's even more dire. Perhaps as we look at this particular what I'm calling a double fee project or a double fee system, it really does impact the wallets. Perhaps not some of ours personally, but it does impact the wallets of our neighbors. I would urge you to please look at things that fly in the face of conservation in some senses. Speaking to the issue that my colleague Lisa Mills referenced, for example, HVAC systems, there are many, many that are much more efficient, that can save much more energy. By causing a double fee structure, and one that is actually 4 to 5 times more expensive to obtain the Laguna Woods HOA fee than the city's fee, not to say anything to do with the time. Take again water or perhaps kitchen remodels where we're asking people to save water, to save energy, and yet some of the things that we're doing perhaps are flying in the face of conservation. I urge the board to remove this item today from the agenda and to discuss it in more detail. Like my colleague Lisa Mills, I'm more than happy to volunteer what time I have to assist with the process. Your staff is talented and knowledgeable, and I think they can work very cleverly and well for you. So let's all work together to solve some of perhaps the larger problems that extend to our neighbors. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Susan Smallwood, Manor 3456B.
No, we're on
Never mind.
13A.
Sorry.
She's on B? Okay. All right. Board, comments, questions? Director Laws.
Director Laws. Well, so last month, errors were identified with this report and information. Some changes were requested. Those errors are still here today. The changes requested were not made. So I'll be voting no on this motion today.
Director Cook.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. Not only are our fees going up, come Wednesday at the city, they're raising their fees, but their fees were already at 95%. They're only raising their fees 5%, but it is an additional fee on top of our fees. What we as a board, I think, are trying to do is trying to remove a lot of these variances, and especially on these things with duplication of services. At this point, we still have all this intact, and so the process is going on to try and recoup the fees of what we're doing. My opinion is we need to stop doing this duplication of services and eliminate this, except for rare occasions when we actually need a real variance. These variances are a misnomer of what's reality. All the structural variances are in reality just an extra step that shouldn't even be handled at our level. They should be handled in plan check and the engineering part of your plans, and also by the city when they do the inspections. We should have nothing to do with the structural. So those should all be thrown out of the variance process. And almost any remodel that's done, there is some form of structural in a remodel. So basically you're saying every remodel you do, you have to have a variance included in it, which delays the process, costs more money, and you're going to try to get a variance for something that really shouldn't be called a variance, such as structural, and you're being required to spend lots and lots of money on the plans and everything that's being drawn up prior to even getting approval for this variance. It should not even be our process on structural. So I think we need to go back and revise what we are calling variances and what we need to do so that we can eliminate this rather than just raising the fees. And that way we can have no fees for things that we shouldn't really be involved in. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing is the association should be done for variances is anything that you see from the outside and anything that's in exclusive use common area or that's in common area. And that should be the limit of what we do because we're duplicating services that are done by the city. And the history of this is before it was a city 22, 23 years ago, it was county. And nobody was coming out here and inspecting and doing all this checking and all the different structural stuff. So that's why it was implemented by the HOA. Now that we've been a city for 22 years, most of this should be eliminated. So I'm going to vote no on this until we revise what we require variances for. Thank you.
Okay. Director Lewis.
I will support what Director Cook has just said, but also we need to, could somebody explain to me, this is a tiny thing on page 7 of 14, agenda item 13A, in the permit alteration fees based on valuation on the right-hand side of the page, it says man doors. What are man doors? About halfway down.
Mr. Doncost?
Good morning. A man door is literally just a doorway, and it's differentiated because it could be a garage door or some other function, but a man door is literally just a door we walk through. It's just referenced as a man door. That's all. In architectural terms.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. President, I just have a question in reference to what Director Cook mentioned earlier. And my question is, did any of these issues come up in the architectural committee for any kind of staff feedback?
Yes, if I may answer?
Please, Director Cook.
Yes, they did. And we asked for lists and we asked for answers. And we really didn't get the type of answers we wanted as to what could be eliminated. So here we are at the
And as
board.
I said in my opening remarks, my chair remarks, that we were moving in the direction of trying to get more of these variants moved to they would be over-the-counter mutual consents. And that's still our goal, is to move in that direction. But the question becomes, is this fee, how necessary is this fee in terms of what it's costing us from manner alteration standpoint to prepare the documents for what's truly legitimately a variance? Okay? I don't think there's a question from the committee's perspective that the justification for the cost is legitimate for what's a real variance. The question is, which qualifies as a real variance? Is that?
Yes, and then what I'm saying is, I don't think we're ready to do this until we eliminate all the ones.
That's a
prior.
separate, that's another issue. But what I'm saying is, I think the committee was in agreement in understanding that the amount of staff time in preparation and for a variance, this was a legitimate cost, okay? However, the number of variances that they have really need to be more as a mutual consent.
And the other part of that is, we weren't giving a really great definition. All we're giving is a title of what a major and a minor or whatever. We're not really being given a definition, and we asked for that to go along with this too.
Okay, Mr. Doncost or Mr. Mejia, would you, either one of you like to address the issue?
I agree with you that we have not addressed those items that are considered variances today. and to move those into more of what I'm going to call a standard mutual consent issue. And there's some reasons for that, which is there would need to be drawings provided that we can use such that it is defined now as a standard and with possibly a standard plan. Truly, this increase is simply due to staff hours that are put into the reports, to the documents that justify the cost increase. The same is true with mutual consents. Those are raised just simply because we have increases. If the board feels that this is not the appropriate time, or as the question has been raised, we don't want to move forward with the fee increase until we've accomplished moving those items that could be moved from a variance over to standard drawings. I certainly understand, and I have no comment to that. But this was a one step towards that, and we haven't lost focus of that issue. We are simply working through that process, and hopefully we can present a list for discussion at the ACSC and open that up to a further definition of what could be a mutual consent.
Well, in terms of what I've heard, Mr. Donkoss, from not only board members here, but in the committee meetings, et cetera, we really would like to see that list, work on that list, increase the number that are mutual consents instead of variances. And I think that we're putting the cart before the horse with this raise in fee because it's going to apply to all of those applications. And many of those applications, the belief of the committee and many of the board members is that those do not deserve to be considered variances. And therefore, we're charging people unnecessarily for things that could be mutual consents. So I think we need to go back and table this. That'd be my recommendation. Send it back to committee and ask the committee to work with you and your office to identify those that could be mutual consents and move them out of the variance process. And then we can bring back this fee for what remains.
Understood.
Does that sound like a reasonable approach? Can I get a motion then to table? Director Cook moves to table. Director Wayne seconds. Tabling is non-debatable, so we'll just call the question. And I will assume then by consent that this motion to table is approved for item 13A, unless I hear dissent. Seeing no dissent, the motion to table is approved. Okay, we now move to 13B. Entertain a motion to approve a contractor violation policy.
All right, the recommendation is to adopt the proposed contractor violation policy. Exhibit A is contractor rules and obligations. And attachment 2 is to provide additional protections to members of mutual property as a result of the members hiring contractors that continue to violate mutual construction rules and regulations. Last month, I read the resolution, and now we're ready for a motion to approve.
Okay, we have speakers to address this particular issue, 13B? No? I thought we
No.
had Ms. Smallwood.
D,
Oh,
13D.
D, your D is in dog? D in dog. Okay, I stand corrected, I just didn't want to bypass. Okay, Director Donkoss, Mr. Donkoss, I'm going to ask you if you please step up, or Bart, I don't know who's going to be the one to answer many of the questions that Director Laws posted previously in relation to this policy. Director Laws, what I want you to know is I took your questions, your comments, I shared them with the folks and asked them to be prepared to respond.
So you may go ahead.
Well, first of all, let me just ask this question. Any other questions or comments at this point by members of the board? Director Lewis.
Yes, we discussed last time about on page 7, under Exhibit A, number 5, this open-ended, no-knock kind of search warrant that's made available to alterations to enter your home at any time, that to be revised, they said that's not the meaning of this, yet the words have not changed one bit in that particular situation.
What page are you on again, Director Lewis?
7,
Of 16?
716.
Number 5. Okay, if you would add that, Bart or Robbie, to...
It should already be there.
What?
It should already be there. It's on.
It's on your list?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Excuse me. Could we hear those questions?
Yeah, he's going to
He's going to say what the questions are. Okay, good.
unless,
I thought
do
maybe
you
it
want
was
to
just-
hand out those copies? Do you have them still?
I still have those copies. I would
All right,
like
why don't
to-
you hand them to the board? They're copies of Director Law's 10 pages and the comments. And then we'll go through them one by one, and then whatever other questions or comments members of the board have related to this policy.
Thank you, Mr. President, Directors. As you mentioned, let's go one by one. As the items are being distributed, the first comment that was made is on page 2 of the staff report. Under financial analysis, the question is, do we expect additional staff time spent discussing violations with contractors? And we believe that initially, as we go through the process of educating, we will be spending a little bit of time. But as time progresses and contractors are fully knowledgeable of the requirements that we have, that we will actually see a decrease in staff time usage, as those contractors that will remain in good standing will be the ones that are performing best. And with that, we can be more efficient with our staff.
Okay.
On page 3, there is a correction to delete a word N under severe violations, item number 1. We concur. On page 4, under item number 3 of MA, manual alteration is responsible for providing the following actions. There's a correction to add a space. We concur. And at the end, item number 5, there's a request to add additional language to make it clear as to what we're going to do with this information. We intended to publish this in our bi-weekly news bulletin. However, adding that additional language will make it more clear to everybody and I guess future generations to be able to follow this and to make sure that we continue to provide this level of information to board members and our residents. So we concur with that addition, even though we intended to do that anyways. On page 5 of 16, under item number 4, there was a question that was raised about the need for the board to arbitrate between the applicant and manual alterations. So this item describes a situation where a contractor has been found to be doing something that is not allowed or doing work without permits. And we will be in the process of working with the contractor to have him either be put on a 90-day no work list or banning this contractor from work. This was added in the event that the work that is taking place cannot be stopped at this time because of safety or being able to occupy the manor. And the intent is to have a conversation with the contractor and the resident as to what the next appropriate steps are. Should it be found that the work can be stopped at that time of this contractor that is found to be in noncompliance, then the review and appeal process will take over, and at that point, the resident would have the option to hire another contractor that is in good standing to complete whatever remains to be done, providing that what remains to be done is an item that's still safe and that they're able to occupy that manner. So I think this will be a step where arbitration or being able to assist, it's a little bit early. That will happen a few steps down under severe violations when a determination by a committee is made and the contractor and or resident then does not agree with that decision and they wish to appeal that to you. Under same page, under moderate violation, there was a comment made if there will be a discussion with the contractor. We intend to have that open communication at any step of this process. This one being just a warning. We didn't know that specific question, but we do intend to have an open communication with contractors that may be subject to violation, particularly since this is the first step to more severe steps that are going to be taken. It is included adding additional language. We do not object to that, as that will make it clear, but we intended to do that. Same page, severe violation on the mandatory 90-day suspension. The question is the suspension for any business? So the suspension will be for any work that the contractor is doing, is in the process of applying for, or to be done in the future the next 90 days, except for any work that will be required to complete given that they may be in the middle of construction, such as what was explained in item number 4 above.
So you'll add words to that effect?
I'm sorry?
So you'll add words to that effect here? Or I'm to assume that? I'm just trying to clarify.
We can add additional language to this. This is further clarified in other sections below. We're open to any suggestions in this case, and adding language here does not affect the process that follows. So appropriate language can be added to clarify that.
Yeah, just what you said, because right now it's read mandatory 90-day suspension period. And so just what you said, which is new business things in the queue, but not what they're currently working on. And that what they're currently working on is covered by other things. That's all I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then backing up, under the moderate violation first offense, where it says notice of moderate violation, I also think that there needs to be included that there'll be a discussion with the contractor, not just notice of violation.
We concur.
Yeah.
Director Cook?
Yes, and do we have a simple definition of what is minor, what is moderate, and what is severe? Because it's not real clear unless you list them in a manner where people can actually see what the minor, moderate, and severe are. You know, reading through all the literature is one thing, but it needs to be much more simplified so that people know that they don't want to commit these infractions, and a definition would really help to have compliance.
Director Cook, I think if you look, for example, on page 3 of 16, under under moderate violation, it says any violation of Exhibit A, and then under severe violations, number 1 says any violation by a contractor performing demolition or initiating renovation work without all appropriate approvals. So in other words, that they've started or engaged in these activities, and it goes on, any contractor performing work contrary to work specifically noted on the mutual consent. So I think it actually really does try to define it. I'm on page 3 of 16.
But again, you're dealing with contractors, and we're dealing with a 16-page document for what they have to comply with, which makes it very extreme to make sure that you don't violate some of these things. And that's what's pushing up the cost for people here in the community to be able to get contractors to come and do work here. We're making things so intense that people just don't want to work here, and those that do raise their prices up to sometimes triple what's going on the outside market. So I think we've just overdone what we're trying to enforce. And when in the text of this it says it's going to lessen staff time, I see no way it's going to lessen staff time to be policing all this. It seems like a contradiction.
So, Director Cook, if this is approved, one of the first things that we are going to do is to reach out to the community, reach out to all the contractors that are performing work, provide as much education in advance so that we hope that this never gets used. If all the contractors that perform work in the village are those contractors who are responsible contractors that follow all the rules, they should not be receiving any notifications of noncompliance. What we want to do with this is to make sure that we protect our residents as well as our assets, to make sure that we don't get contractors that don't follow rules that could damage property as a result of their work. And when those few instances occur, we want to address those as early as possible to minimize the impact. It is not the intent to slow down the process or to increase cost. It's to be able to get qualified contractors to do proper work in the village. I hope that answers your question.
Director Lewis.
I think part of what Director Cook was saying is that this needs to be distilled down into a bit of a summary, like a quick start guide when you buy your refrigerator, that you go through certain things, the important things. Everything can't be listed, but major considerations for doing work in the village should be summarized. To make it quicker to read. No one's going to sit and read necessarily 16 pages thoroughly, except for the people here. I think it's unrealistic that you need to summarize. And yes, you can't put everything in the summary, but just to give contractors a general feel of the important items that they need to address with every job. That's all.
And that is a great idea, Director Lewis. And that's one of the things that we plan to do as part of the education portion of it. And you are correct. This has a lot of language that allows the process to take place. Contractors will want to know what is it that they can and cannot do, and what will trigger a notification to them. We will include that as part of our outreach, using our website, using our mutual consent packets that are distributed to contractors and our residents, so that they know upfront, even before they apply, what we're going to be looking for as far as their performance, the quality of the work that will be expected of them.
Let me ask a question, if I could, to follow up. I don't want to scare off contractors, okay? But could we send out a kind of a notification to all contractors of if this policy is approved, that there are these issues, and like the one-page cheat sheet or the refrigerator page, that all contractors just be sent that, or would that possibly scare off contractors? That's not what I want to do, but I'm trying to think about how we get this information in their hands. I'm not talking about when they first apply for, work or things of that nature, but before any of that even takes place, that just all the contractors that we have that do work in the village, that at least shared that cheat sheet. Director McCary?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, President Munchnick. If there was maybe a one-page summary that accompanied, say, this is a summary of what's in these 16 pages. This, for additional information, refer to the complete document for specifics. If we could have this with an additional summary page.
Director Cook?
And along with that, if you had a summary page, the alterations packet that's given out in past, the packet's given out, you fill out everything, and what happens is say, oh, well, you need this, 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 and this, because everything wasn't included in the packet. But this is something that also could be included in that packet so that the member has it and hands it to the contractor when they first start looking. And then if they want to go into more depth, they can go to this 16-page document and look at it. And just one other item we talked about last time was the holiday schedule and maybe eliminating some of those holidays. And one of the comments that was made was, well, there won't be staff here on holidays. Well, there's no staff here on Saturdays when they're doing their stuff. So to me, I think we should eliminate all the holidays except for Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. Those are the major ones. Everybody else works most of the other days in regular business. So just another little part that I'd like to see taken out so that the contractors can work through their week.
So, start the
Director
first
Jarrett?
one.
Director Jarrett?
Yes.
Dr. Cook, I'd like to get clarification on what days you think they should not work. I'm concerned, basically, when contractors work on Saturdays in the Garden Villa buildings, because there's a lot of people that they bother when they're working on Saturdays. And we do have, I think it's 9 to 2 now they're allowed to work, which is not a problem. But can you expand on what you were just saying about the holidays?
The 3 holidays I think that they shouldn't work are Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, and New Year's Day.
Okay.
Otherwise, the other holidays are, typically made into 3-day weekends, and one of them's either a Monday or a Friday, and you're taking a day out of the work week for normal work weeks.
Okay.
Makes no sense.
President
I'm sorry,
Mushnick.
go ahead. I was reading something, go ahead.
President Mushnick, I suggest that we take this and rewrite it and bring it back next month. It really needs to be reworked. I looked further into some of the questions here, and then we could get into the fine print that we don't want to have, and I don't blame you for that. But I think we need to bring it back next month
So
after a
are
rewrite.
you moving to table?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I see a second in Director Cook. Again, non-debatable. We'll take a vote. All those in favor of tabling the motion, I will assume then by consent that the motion will be tabled unless I hear dissent. Hearing no dissent, we will table this and it'll go back to committee and we'll pursue this in depth in the proper committee. Thank you for your attention to that one.
Yeah, thanks, Bart and Ronnie.
Moving along. C, entertain a motion to approve a revision to the water heater enclosure disposition. Director Jarrett, would you please address the motion?
Yeah, the recommendation is that the ACSC recommends the third board approve the resolution 322XX suspending further use of the existing standard 32 water heater relocation until a new standard is adopted and approve manner alterations to contract with Cardoso and Associates in the amount of $6,170 to revise the standard drawings for a new rot-resistant water heater. The correction that we did make that was recommended by Director Lewis last month when this came up, and we did replace the final line on page 6 of 26, item 13C, page 6 of 26. And we replaced with the following, the last line with the following: once landscaping completes the sprinkler system conformity, landscaping shall notify manner alterations as such. And with that, we need a motion to approve this revision to the water heater enclosure, this disposition.
Okay. Director McCary moves. A second?
There are some member comments as
Well,
well.
we got to get the motion on the floor first. Director Wayne seconds. Okay, the motion is on the floor. We'll go to member comments. Is there anybody here in the audience?
No, just 2 emails.
All right, please read the emails.
The first one is from Lee Baker, Manor 3022A. Dear Board, my comment is about the water heater enclosures. I care about the appearance of the community and would appreciate it if you would vote to discontinue future water heater enclosures in the common areas. They are a detriment to the appearance of our buildings. Thank you. Okay. And the second one is from Roger Hoover, Manor 3024D. Please vote to discontinue the unsightly water heater enclosures in the common area. This will help the appearance of the village as well as our property values. Thank you.
Okay. Comments or discussion from board members? Director Cook.
I just want a clarification from staff. I thought our process within the committee was to eliminate the plywood treated type structure and just go with matching stucco veneer composite siding to match the existing buildings. And from what I'm reading in here, it almost sounds like it's both still.
Could you share what page you're on, Director
On
Cook?
page 7 of 26, on the top right, where it says alterations to be 5/8 inch CDX could be 7/8 inch stucco veneer, composite siding, looking for alternatives here. I'm just need a definition of what that really means.
Director Cook, Mr. President, we are taking this in steps. We're asking for your approval to suspend issuing any permits for exterior water heaters. What we have presented and in work, this is the work of our manager who came up with these interim steps should there be a need to construct any new water heater enclosures while our consultant and you take a look at a revised standard that would allow for the upgraded water enclosures. So these are interim steps. The architect that will be helping us with this will take those comments and expand on those and then come up with a final standard along with specifications. I hope that answers your question, or if I made it more confusing, let me know.
It does answer the question. However, I would like to suggest, we're talking about letting the contract as part of this for the architect to do the design work, right?
Correct.
So why don't we hold any renovation of water heater huts at this point until we have the new design in place and then use the new design? I'd hate to see somebody do plywood today and then a month from now we have the report from the architect with the design and we say, okay, this is the new design requirement. I'd rather just wait and have them hold off on any water heater hut replacements at this point.
I agree with that. Delay the upgrades or the
Yeah,
revisions, but part of this is not allowing new. We're
Right.
just grandfathering in the old, but when they have to be updated to the new standard that we've gone forward with.
That's what
It's
I'm
a higher standard
and that's what I'm
than just the
suggesting.
plywood.
And we concur with that.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then what we're saying is that we would, the motion that's on the floor is to approve this motion with the condition that the plywood replacement be removed at this point, and all water heater hut replacements of existing water heater huts would wait until the new standard is in place. Is that what I'm hearing? Go ahead.
This is actually just for the funding of making the new architectural guidelines and authorizing the $5,000.
$6,000, yeah.
$6,000 amount to have them set the new standard. So it's kind of like convoluted with what's written in here, and it should just be that specific item to go to the new standard and get the architectural design for the new standard. But is there any possibility that we can set that standard in-house? I mean, it's not a complex structure. It's concrete slab, 2x4 structural, then stucco to match on the outside with the roof to match.
Yeah.
And
we'll defer to Mr. Donkost, who is an architect.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Actually, the standard is set within this particular item, and that's exactly what was done. It was red marks on the existing standard to indicate those items. That's how it was bid to the architectural firm, that we would need an updated drawing to reflect these things. And this started as a rot-resistant structure and then evolved into, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing these in the future because of architectural and aesthetic reasons. So I agree with you that essentially this is a redraw and permit of a standard that, the board may not want to invoke the new water heater relocations in the future, and that's fine as well.
Question.
So that's what was done.
But the question is, can you do these drawings in-house?
We can't. We don't have anyone that has AutoCAD. We don't have those programs. So we really don't have anyone to draft up these particular items and publish them in standard drawings. We don't have the staff for that.
Okay. All righty. So where we are is approval of this motion, which includes the preparation of the architectural drawings to the standards that we now have. And once we have those architectural drawings, we can go ahead with the renovation of water heater huts that are already in existence that need to be replaced, upgraded, or repaired. All right? Go ahead, Director Cook.
And in conjunction with that, to be upgraded at any sale, future
Right,
sale.
that's part of the proposal, correct. All righty. Then we're going to remove the plywood issue at this point, because we're not going to do any upgrades with old material or old standards, and we're going to wait and do it with the new standard. All right. Any other discussion about this motion? Hearing none. With that change, I'm going to assume then by consent, unless I hear dissent. Director Laws?
I'll just abstain.
Okay. I will then assume the motion is approved with one abstention. Thank you. All righty, moving on now to 13D. Entertain a motion to approve additional occupancy fee. Director Jarrett, if you'd read it, and then we'll take member comments.
This is a recommendation by staff that the board consider creating a $50 monthly fee for additional occupants over 2 per household in order to mitigate expenses incurred by Third Laguna Hills Mutual for wear and tear of the common areas, as well as increased utility expenses. Last month I read the resolution, so we're ready for a motion.
Okay, can I get a motion, please, to approve? Director Wayne moves. Second? Director Cook, I saw Director Cook's hand kind of go up. Director Cook seconds the motion. All righty, we'll take member comments on this issue.
Susan Smallwood, Manor 3456B.
Almost good afternoon. I urge you to not pass this resolution. Laguna Woods has always been a shared use cost village. How many single residents live here? How many snowbirds live here? How many of us RVers who might leave for 4 months at a time? I really think that charging for a third person is just not part of the shared use cost. And I urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Michaela?
No, that is it.
Okay, motion is on the floor. Is there any discussion about the motion? Director Cook.
Just to make a comment, the shared use historically is based on 2 occupants, and having a third or a fourth or a fifth occupant does require services, water, piping, sewage fees, all of that. So arguably, it probably should be done because it was never based on more than 2 occupants. And all of the other entities charge more for additional occupants. GRF does, United does. We're the only ones that have postponed it as long as we could, and that's why we're implementing it this time.
Okay, any other comment? Director Wayne Sosa?
I think in support of what Director Cook just said, we also heard the general manager of El Toro Water District this morning speak very eloquently to the issues related to water. And it's not only supply, but it is cost. And that is one thing that an additional person in a unit does bring up, the use of water. There's no way to avoid it. So again, I think that supports why it needs to be done.
Director McCary.
Yeah, thank you, President Munching. And I just would like to remind the board and the community that at our last month's meeting, there were an overwhelming amount of emails and calls coming in urging us and encouraging us to pass this resolution because the majority of the people that have called in or emailed in do support the additional occupancy fee.
Okay. Other comments? I will say this in terms of water. The gentleman's done a great job of saving water, reducing our use of water. However, even though we've reduced the amount of gallons that we've used, the cost of our water has continued to go up and will continue to go up, even though we save money and save water. So it's a really difficult situation. Any other comments related to this motion? Hearing none, I will go ahead then and assume by consent unless I hear otherwise. If there's any dissent, hearing none, this motion is unanimously approved. Thank you. All right. New business. Entertain a motion to approve the 2022 annual election schedule and approve a resolution appointing the inspector
Resolution 2022, approve Inspector of Election Services. Whereas Civil Code 5110 requires an association to select an independent third party as an inspector of elections. Whereas for transparency purposes and due to the number of ballots received, it is necessary to contract for an inspector of elections. Whereas an inspector of elections is used, among other tasks, to print and mail voter packages, inspect and tabulate ballots, and certify results. And now therefore be it resolved, March 15, 2022, that the Board of Directors of Laguna Hills Mutual hereby approves single sourcing a contract to Unilec to perform inspectors of election services for the 2022 annual meeting of the corporate members, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are directed on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. We need a motion?
Yes, we need a motion. Somebody move, please.
Also moved.
Director McCary moves. Can I see a second? Director Wayne seconds. Any discussion? Director Laws?
Yes, have any vendors other than Unilect been looked at? Have we considered others?
CEO Foster?
We solicited requests or proposals in response to a request for proposal 2 years ago. There were 2 respondents at that time. Unilec was selected. As this will be the 3rd year, the item will be again advertised for proposal before next year.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions, issues related to this motion? Director Lewis?
When you say advertised, where for proposals, how is that done, the procedure?
That is handled by our purchasing department. They identify vendors with this expertise, send them the request for proposal, and we await their responses.
Just as a point of information, the 2 vendors that were solicited last time, is it my understanding correct that the second vendor is also no longer in business?
I've heard that. I would have to verify that, but that is my understanding, yes.
Director Cook?
Question, were there more than 2 vendors? Were those just the 2 that responded?
Those were the 2 that responded, but what we found last time is that very few election services companies have expertise in HOA elections. Most of them have experience in union type elections rather than HOA elections.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those, I'll assume by consent, unless I hear otherwise. If there's any dissent, motion is unanimously approved. All right, moving along, we now have the entertain a motion to approve a resolution appointing the Inspector of Elections for the recall vote on June 3rd, 2022. Director Jarrett.
All right, the recommendation is to approve appointing Unilec Corporation as the Inspector of Election for the recall vote and provisional board election. The resolution reads, whereas Civil Code 5110 requires an association to select an independent third party as an inspector of elections, whereas in accordance with Civil Code 5110, 5115, 5120, and 5125, the Inspector of Elections performs several tasks during an election, including but not limited to print and mail voter packages, inspect and tabulate ballots, and certify results. Now, therefore, be it resolved on March 15, 2022, that the Board of Directors of 3rd Laguna Hills Mutual hereby approves single sourcing a contract to Unilec to perform inspectors of election services for a June 3rd, 2022 vote to recall Robert Muchnick and Lynn Jarrett and elect 2 provisional board members if the recall is approved. And resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are directed on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Director McCary moves. Can I get a second? Director Cook seconds. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, seeing none. I will then again assume by consent that this motion is approved unless I hear any dissent. Motion is approved unanimously. We now move on to item 15, committee reports. Director Rain Sotsak.
Okay, thank you. The first committee report will be the report of the Finance Committee, which met on March 1st of 2022. And we can have the first slide. We always start with an overall income statement. Can we have that slide up? It's always better to see the numbers than just hear them, since there are so many. While we're waiting for that to load, I will give you the numbers, at least verbally, and you can see them when they appear. First slide that we do is just the overall income and expense statement, and our assessment revenues and non-assessment revenues added together gave us a total revenue at this is, and by the way, this report is through the end of January. That was all we had available at the time. And total revenue of $3,590,000 against total expenses of $2,532,000, and leaving us a net revenue of $1,058,000. As we move on to the very next statement, we always look first at the operating budget and the operating expenses, because that is what we work on day to day and what we budget for and plan for. Our assessment revenue, as you can see, was the $2.384 million. That's the portion of revenue that came from assessments. The portion that came from non-assessments is small by comparison, $136,000, with a total revenue of $2.520 million, and against expenses of $1.813. And therefore, we have an operating surplus by the end of January of $707,000. Moving right on, we always look at expenses and income compared to what we budgeted for, and you can see the assessment revenue was equal to the budget. Our non-assessment revenue was slightly lower than budget, and our total revenue, therefore, came in at $3,625,000. Fortunately, our expenses were also considerably lower than budget, and so we wound up with a net revenue of $635,000, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner. As we move on, let's see what accounted for that and where did that come from. Well, everything in the orange, the bars going to the right, are positives, and the yellow bars down near the bottom going off to the left are those that were unfavorable to what we budgeted. And you can see that outside services was the highest in terms of favorability. And part of that was because of outside services. Part of it was because some of our projects are budgeted for every single month, but the repairs on such things as roofs really aren't going to start until April. And so we actually have budgeted amounts that we didn't get bills for yet. And so outside services was primarily because of work that hasn't begun. Employee compensation was also quite favorable, but again, partly because of open positions and partly because of the outsourcing we did. Insurance was favorable. It's always nice to see that once in a while. It was actually favorable due to the property insurance coming in lower than anticipated. We will be renewing in June. That's anticipated at the time of renewal, and at that point, we anticipate, based upon forecasts, that we will be right in line with our budgeted amount for the rest of the year. As we move on, I'm delighted to report that utilities were favorable. This is the first time they've been favorable in a very long time. And again, that was partly due to water. And so thanks to all the residents who have been really working hard to decrease their water use, and to the little bit of rain we got that helped the landscaping water. We have then materials and supplies was also favorable, and that really had to do with paint projects that won't begin, but they're budgeted every single month. So we stay ahead of budget, and then we start getting the bills later on. If we move down, we're now in the yellow range, the areas that were unfavorable to budget. Professional fees, and that had to do with consulting that began actually earlier than anticipated. And it had to do, focus primarily on the groundwater investigation at Gate 11. And so that was something that started a little sooner than we planned, but we definitely are prepared for that, and the budget does account for it later in the year. If we move on, these pie charts just are really helpful to get a sense, a nice visual sense of where our expenses actually are and where our revenues are. The first one is revenues, and let's start at the bottom. I know that's a funny place usually to start, but I wanted you to start at 6 o'clock at the bottom, and we're going to go clockwise around, because you can see where permit fees was 14% of that non-assessment revenue. The inspections, how much of that relates to it, which is about 5%. And then we have such things as late fees and golf cart electric fees, carport. These are all fairly small until we get to the resident maintenance fee, and that is primarily chargeable services. And from now on, we will be identifying that piece of the pie as chargeable services, so it'll be clearer for everybody. And then we have laundry revenue, lease processing fee, and resale processing. So it's kind of a nice way to get a sense of where those non-assessment revenues come from. As we move to the next slide, we also see where expenses are. And not surprisingly, employee compensation and expenses related to that are the biggest part of the pie. That's in the orange area down at the bottom of 42% of our total expense. Insurance, the second biggest one, 25%, and utilities, 14%. The other things, such as outside services, the allocation of the mutuals, material supplies, and others, and repairs, are very small comparatively. As we move on, we don't just have an operating budget. We also have other funds that we have to be concerned about, with replacement funds being very important, our Garden Villa Fund, our Disaster Fund, and unappropriated expenditures fund, which actually can be looked at as a contingency fund. Those are the things that might come up that we can't always anticipate in advance. And as you can see, the replacement funds actually were replenished. The number on the bottom of $19,784,000 is higher than the number on the top, and that's what we always like to see. The Garden Villa also was slightly replenished, starting out at $104,000 and ending at $110,000. The Disaster Fund went down only slightly, and that had to do with expenses occurring just during that period. And the last one, the unappropriated expenditures of the contingency fund, has pretty much had small expenditures of $145,000 and stayed fairly close. But we expect to be expending those funds throughout the year, so that's anticipated. And if we move on, this is just the same funds shown in a bar chart to give you an idea of what portion of all of those other funds, how it's divided into replacement, disaster, et cetera, and how those funds are doing relatively. So you can see from 2018, which is the first bar on the left, all the way over to 2022, replacement funds have been growing, and the plan is to continue to grow those. The disaster fund has shrunk slightly, as already mentioned, and that we are replacing some of the funds were used for insurance, and it's permissible to use at the time that we did. However, it's also interesting that we used to not carry earthquake insurance, and the disaster fund was designed to cover that, and now earthquake insurance is included, and so we don't have to be concerned about that. And I always like to point out at the very top, there's a tiny gray line, because we don't like to forget our Garden Villa Recreation Room Fund. It is small, but it is mighty. And so it is taking care of those things that need attention. And moving on to the last part of the Financial Committee report, before we have a very brief special report, is the resale history. And it doesn't take much to see that blue bar on the right as January 22 resales, showing robust resales. In fact, they are far better than 2021, which was 41 versus the 50 we just had in January, and certainly considerably better, more than double what we had in 2020. So resales are looking good, and the average resale price in 2020 was $417,292. in January, again, this is just a 1-month snapshot of 450 to 28. So you see an increase there. But I think what's probably the most important is seeing that robust rebound in sales themselves. And so that's always pleased to report something like that. So if we move on, we did have just a small presentation on our HOA reserve funds. There's always a question of what do we do with them, where do they go, how do they earn money, etc. And so just wanted to share with you, we are constrained by certain requirements within Davis Sterling. We certainly are, it's very important to make sure we have our reserve funds and that they are earning what they can. And what's important is Davis Sterling says, and they say this in protection of our homeowners and of our owners here, the funds that we have in the reserve fund have to be deposited in accounts that protect the principal and this is very, very important, are covered by insurance provided by an agency of the federal government. And that is absolutely huge. If you will move on, it's kind of going backwards, go to the very next one because we just finished that one. And the investment strategy, which is also outlined and suggested by Davis Sterling, has 3 areas and guiding principles, and they're in order of importance. The first and most important is that is safety, preservation against loss. The second is liquidity, that ability to convert quickly to cash and to take advantage of market changes as they occur. And third is yield or return on investment. And you see that little asterisk there. It's very clearly defined that boards are to seek a reasonable return on the association's reserve accounts, but, and it's an important but, should never adopt a strategy that emphasizes return over preservation of capital. And we actually have our own Orange County to thank for that. It was in the 90s when Orange County got a little exuberant and ultimately declared bankruptcy, and therefore Davis Sterling is going to protect our HOAs and make sure that doesn't happen to us. And we are also protecting that as well as stewards of those funds. So if you look on the very next slide, we just wanted to give you some background of how we work within this. And the most common HOA investment is a certificate of deposit. And during these very low interest times, that seemed to be the best idea. The problem is that there's usually a $250,000 federal insurance limit per any account holder. So no matter how many accounts you have, no matter how many things you have there, $250,000 typically is all that's protected. So we were faced with how to fulfill Davis Sterling without purchasing CDs from at least 100 different institutions, since we have $25 million in our reserve fund. So if we move on, I'll tell you what we did and how we've moved. The world was facing the same problem, and so an organization, a group called CDARS, it's CD Account Registry Service, got together. And it's a network of banks working together to help high balance savers, such as us, ensure that all their deposits are protected. And it spreads funds across multiple CD accounts at different banks while managing them under a single umbrella. So that was what we did. If you move on to the very next slide, and we're almost at the climax, which is a good one. So to keep in line with Davis Sterling, they do want us to keep our funds in California if we can. The money was moved from a firm that was actually charging us a fee for not doing anything, while the funds weren't doing anything either. So we were operating as a negative. And we took that money and set up an agreement with SunWest Bank. $20 million of our money was left liquid, just so that we could fulfill that ability. All projections were that interest rates would be moving in 2022. And so $20 million of it was invested in liquid funds, or just kept there at 14 basis points, which isn't a lot. And we had a 1-year CD for $5 million at 15 points. That isn't a lot, and it's typically lower interest than some banks do. The problem is that it had to be a bank that was part of that CDAR process so that we could have our money distributed into 100 different CDs and managed, and therefore all of our money was covered and keeping it liquid at the same time. The good news was there were absolutely zero fees for managing these funds, so we were in a little better shape than before. And as low as that was, that rate was actually twice the national average for those type of funds. And keeping them liquid permitted adjustments to the changing interest environment, which is changing. And so if we move on to the very next slide, and the final one, toward the end of February, there was a sudden big move in interest rates, particularly on Treasury bills, which of course are guaranteed by the federal government. And the big move, the range was 80 to 100 basis points. You know, those interest rates fluctuate on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis. And so the board approved moving the reserve funds that we had into T-bills, given that 80 to 100 basis points was considerably higher than the 14 and 15 we were getting. What we did, and the board had a special meeting not long ago to approve moving them and take them at the best rate we could. And the board has purchased $25.2 million in T-bills at a 12-month term, 90 basis points, again, to give us some liquidity because projections are that interest rates will move higher, and the ability to peel off money from that larger sum at any time. And that's important because, again, projections have been that we will be seeing hopefully 2 and maybe 3 interest rate increases during the year. At one point, the high point was 100 basis points, and then the Ukraine situation developed, and there was suddenly a drop, and we were very fortunate to be able to get all of our funds in at 90 basis points compared to the 14 and 15 we were getting before. What's important is that not only are these one-year T-bills so that they have an expiration within 12 months, but it also, because of the ability to peel off monies from the larger sum, if there's another bigger move, it maintains the option to take advantage of the anticipated increase in interest rates, which may again and are expected to occur during the year. So we just wanted to keep you up to date, not only with what is happening, but why it's happening and the constraints under which the board has to function. And with that, that concludes the Finance Committee report. Our next meeting will be April the 5th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom.
Thank you very much. Moving on, report of the Architectural Control and Standards Committee. Some of this information I shared with you during my chair remarks, but we met most recently on the 28th of February, during which time we discussed the issue of variances and some of the associated problems. The committee agreed that it may need to meet more frequently, which I told you earlier. We are going to meet on the 18th, that's this Friday at 1:30 here in the boardroom, where we'll be considering 4 variance applications. Like I said earlier, the committee has agreed to meet periodically in addition to its once-a-month scheduled meeting, so that as variances, a group of them are ready to be approved as they come through manner alterations, that the committee will step up and try to review them on a more frequent basis to facilitate things for members of the community. And again, the committee will be approving those variance requests, not recommending them to the board, but approving them so that they can avoid going to the board and thereby hopefully speed up the process by between 30 and possibly as many as 60 days for the members. So that's something I think that everybody is very happy about. And I think that I thank the committee for its willingness to meet periodically in addition to the monthly meeting. It's additional work for those members, but I think it's something we want to do for the community. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is March 28th at 9:30 a.m. here in the boardroom. We'll move on now. The next committee report is Director McCary on communications.
Thank you, President Monchinick. The third Communications Committee, which is a quarterly committee meeting, last met January 12th, and the next meeting is scheduled for April 13th at 1:30 p.m., and it will be hopefully an in-person meeting.
Thank you. Next is Director Engdahl and the report of the Maintenance and Construction Committee, sir.
Thank you. The latest third M&C meeting was March 7. Just briefly go over some of the main topics and the status as we discussed then. There was a PowerPoint presentation on the status of the SCE charge-ready applications for EV parking in third, made by Mr. Meja. The committee decided to withdraw these applications at this time due to already tight parking situations and questionable return on investment for what part we had to put into it. Search will continue for other opportunities. Mr. Mejia also updated the status on the groundwater problem in Gate 11 and presented a contractor proposal for engineering design and construction of a mitigation system. Mr. West presented a PowerPoint. This is PowerPoint day, I'll tell you. Mr. West presented a PowerPoint status report regarding Senate Bill 326. That's the state mandated inspection of load-bearing elements in our buildings. And he included a rough draft request for proposal with that. And that will probably be presented in a refined manner in a future meeting and subsequently be advertised to possible vendors. Possibility of installing pressure regulator valves in certain buildings in order to hopefully prevent supply line leaks and cut down on the resulting water intrusion damage was presented by Mr. Barnett. Because of staff constraints, it's anticipated this would probably have to be done by outside vendors at a cost estimate approaching $3 million if all buildings were to be included. Staff was requested to refine this analysis and it'll be considered in the 2023 budget process. A couple of other items discussed briefly. The solar light that failed on Via del Faro actually between Sociega and the Par 3 golf course was presented. That looks like about $37,000 and maybe less if replaced with a solar fixture. And I think there's going to be a little more look into whether one is really needed there at all. Mr. Chiara also summarized the status of committee cost evaluation for a 3-year termite inspection cycle, and that was felt to be excessive too, but will be considered probably during the 2023 budget cycle. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the Parking and Golf Cart Subcommittee, Director Laws.
Yes, the Parking and Golf Cart Subcommittee last met January 19th. I shared the updates regarding the discussion and actions from that meeting during the February board meeting. And the next meeting of the Parking and Golf Cart Subcommittee will be next Wednesday, March 23rd at 1:30 here in the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Garden Villa Recreation Subcommittee, Director Jarrett.
The meeting was held on February 23rd. Items discussed were the GV Rec Prom Budget Reserves Fund, completion of inspections, plans for making component replacements during 2022, water heater and epoxy flooring budget summary, the exit signs going electric, fire systems and smoke detectors, and a discussion on the carpeting color palette. Some members called in their requests regarding issues within the rec rooms themselves, and some even brought up problems that had nothing to do with the rec rooms. The component replacements were of interest to most people, and if additional information is needed on those, please email me at ljjarrett@yahoo.com or call me at 949-310-9001. The next meeting will be held on May the 26th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
Thank you. Next up is the Landscape Committee, and Director Jarrett, you're up again.
Okay, the landscape meeting last met on March the 3rd. The new stepping stone process is now on our website under landscaping activities. So there is a process you need to go through. VMS Director Wyman reviewed the project log information with the committee, going over the contracts that are in process and giving an update on each. He also reviewed the tree report with the committee. He has directed staff to address any problem they see in the field pertaining to water heaters not hidden with landscaping installed around those cabinets. Landscaping should be used to improve the aesthetics caused by alterations. A few tree removal requests were addressed and some member comments were received. One member has complained about the fact that Gate 14 should have a drip irrigation system, and it does not. Director Wyman stated that that is not a solution for a huge area, but that rotator sprinkler heads would be much better, especially with water savings. But those type heads cost about $10 each compared to the less than $1 per head that we pay now. Cost prohibitive for our budget currently, that's for sure. Gate 14 has no place where we can change out turf for drought-tolerant plants because there's no individual people there. Everything is all common area. 3-story buildings or 2-story buildings. That's all that's in Gate 14. Just a reminder, we do not trim or remove trees to gain a view. Such requests continue to come in. We need to really advertise that. People just still are coming at us with requests for views. The next meeting will be held April the 7th at 9:30 a.m. in the boardroom. But I do want to mention one thing, but I need to ask Siobhan this. Are they getting new uniforms for the staff of landscaping?
Yes.
Are they on order, or are they using them yet? Or
They're in progress. They've selected the colors. I don't know the exact status of their arrival.
Oh, good, because I saw those at the BMS meeting, and I thought, oh, that's great. So they're going to have new uniforms, and you can readily identify the workers versus the foreman and the supervisor. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Director Rain Sosak and the report of the Water Conservation Committee.
Thank you very much. The Water Conservation Committee last met on February 24th, 2022. And you heard the report this morning from the General Manager of El Toro Water District, and we are approaching a fairly serious situation with water. And I just want to share with everybody the thanks of the entire community, because our rates went up July 1st. We were very concerned about budget, et cetera, with water use. And in August, after a lot of work that's been done by conservation groups all over the village and by the Water Committee, in August we noticed a decrease in residential water use in Third, and that was very exciting. It's not a big decrease, but it's a decrease. And that continued into September and October and November and December and January. We have had 6 straight months of less residential water use than we have had in the previous, comparing it to the same month the year before. And what's really important is, of those 6 months, 4 of them, that water usage was lower than it's been in the past 4 years for that same comparative month. So it's not a lot, but it's progress, and thank you. And the fact that we've seen it for 6 straight months means something's happening. That wasn't just an aberration of the first time. So thank you, and the work will continue. We were delighted to host the General Manager of El Toro Water District this morning, who gave us a very informative, not what we wanted to hear, but a very informative report on the water situation. The committee will continue its work. The next meeting is scheduled for April 28th at 2 p.m. If there are any changes to that date or time, they will be announced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Comment?
Yes, Director Frankel.
Just for information purposes, for anybody who's tuned into this meeting, our electric bill for the last month was over $900. It was a slab leak, and we got it fixed. Now it's down to $200 and some odd.
You're talking about your personal electric bill, not the village, correct?
Your electric bill or your water bill?
Electric, but it was a slab leak. And it knocked it back down to where it belongs. The electric bill is now normal.
So the slab leak was affecting your electricity usage somehow?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next up
Nice
is
to
the
hear.
Resident Policy and Compliance Committee, and that's my report. This committee met most recently on March 2nd. At the meeting, we discussed expanding the delivery of materials to resident manors so that they could include door hangers. Issues about placing items on bulletin boards in LH21 buildings that use bulletin boards for information specific to their buildings. These bulletin boards are purchased by the members of each building, so that's not something we really have regular access to. The role of petitions as they relate to the policy was discussed. Many changes were discussed, and the item was tabled until the next meeting so that members of the committee can see a clean document with the changes. On the agenda for future discussion will be criteria for approval of new owners during the resale process, questions about equity in homes in foreign countries, pensions from foreign countries, and those who receive monthly stipends, but it is not formal income that requires the filing of tax returns will be discussed. The next meeting of the committee is scheduled for April 26th at 9:30 in the boardroom. We now move on to GRF committee highlights. Up first is Director McCary and the Community Activities Committee.
Thank you, President Amanchnik. The CAC committee met on March 10th. Some of the updates given by Brian Gruner were staffing and recruitment constraints continue to challenge the Recreation Department, opportunities to expand operations. He reported that he's also making some progress as he's hired a coordinator, specialist, golf attendant, and one part-time recreation leader. Emeritus Institute has started in-person classes, and those started in February. They updated our emergency protocol with new signage at all the facilities defining emergency and non-emergency events. Costs increased for material and delivery, such as hay and aquatic chemicals, are also increasing. Brian also reported that quarter distribution are going on right now in the Recreation Office. They started starting Monday, March 14th, and it will be Monday through Friday. And Raquel Unger mentioned that in her VMS report as well. Monthly delinquent reports provided to the Recreation Department to follow up with residents that have not paid their annual dues for their lockers, for garden plots, and all of these that are under $1,000. So Recreation Department will be following up on those. There are also cameras. The camera installation at all the clubhouses is probably completed by now, but it is ongoing. In terms of the garden center, they've aggregated our garden center 2 access gate and changed the access code to garden center 1. To date, they have received 18 volunteer registration forms, and they'll start the screening applications for the garden center starting this week. He also reported that since announcing that they were recruiting volunteers for Clubhouse 6, they have received 14 applicants, which will be screening the week of March 21st. Let's see. He also reported some of the St. Patrick Day events. It's going to be held at Clubhouse 5. There's a free movie on March 21st at Clubhouse 5. The TAC preparation process is going on right now. And for the days of 5/23 to 5/30, they will be relocated to Clubhouse 7. The Village Bazaar is scheduled for 8/2 at Clubhouse 5 parking lot, and reservations are already sold out. There is a health and wellness fair April 23rd, and this is a free event. And lastly, there was a presentation by the Men's Golf Club, and they asked the committee to consider a resolution to waive the greens fees, and they would like to donate all the proceeds to the foundation. So the committee made a recommendation that will go to the GRF board, and the GRF board will make a decision as to what to do with the issue with the men's golf fee. And the next meeting is scheduled for April 4th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. GRF Finance Committee?
No, the Equestrian.
I'm sorry, Equestrian ad hoc.
That ad hoc committee has not met since January. The next meeting is scheduled for March 30th at 1:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting.
Thank you. Apologize about that. GRF Finance Committee, Director Rain-Zozak.
The GRF Finance Committee met on February the 16th. The primary purpose of that was to discuss the upcoming audit and to officially announce the 2 third mutual representatives to that audit who are non-board members, and those are just members of the community, and they are Peggy Moore and Cynthia Rupert. And also on that committee, Diane Phelps happens to be a third member who is on VMS, and James Hopkins on GRF. And that was essentially the whole purpose of that meeting. The next meeting will be April the 20th at 1:30 in the boardroom.
GRF, the Landscape Committee, the report will be given by Director Jarrett.
Okay, the VMS Landscape Services Director Kurt Wayman gave some interesting reports at the March 9th meeting. One included that of the master control irrigation system that will be deployed over a period of years due to the costs. Wish we could have it now. Another was information of the different colored. What's that noise? Another was of information of the different colored notification flags on the ground and what they mean. He gave an update on the creek, which included a lot of data on the cattails, which is always of interest to residents who live around the creek and those who walk the creek. The environmental laws are very strict. Staff submitted a request to the CDFW, an environmental agency, to modify the cattail removal process. There are rules as to how often they are cut, how low they are cut, and the detailed use of herbicide that helps keep the center section of the stream open and flowing. This reduces stagnation, reduces storm damage, and increases the health of native species and vastly increases the aesthetic of the creek. The most interesting part of the meeting, however, was a presentation on trees given by Barb Margette, tree arborist and support landscape manager. The presentation included several slides. It was a real education on trees, and I requested that with the help of Village TV, that Bob make a similar presentation that could be put on our YouTube for all residents to watch at any time. That really was a wonderful presentation on trees. The next meeting will be on June the 8th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Engdahl, you're up next with the GRF Maintenance and Construction Committee.
Okay, thank you. The last GRF regular, I turned on the microphone here. The last regular GRF M&C meeting was held February 9th, and we pretty much covered that in the last report. There was also a special meeting on March 3rd, which it was mainly to consider space utilization in this building, in the community center, and included a tour of the building. And the next meeting for the GRF M&C is scheduled for April 13.
Okay, thank you. And now the Clubhouse Facilities Renovation Ad Hoc Committee, Director Frankel.
The committee has not met since our last meeting, and the next meeting is to be determined.
Okay, thank you. Director McCary, you're up with the Media and Communications Committee.
Thank you, President Munchak, and thank you, Director Jarrett, for taking notes for me as I was not able to stay for the meeting. So the committee met on, let's see here, where am I? I lost my place.
February 22nd.
February 22nd, thank you. So some of the highlights from that, it was reported that the docent tours will start up again in March. More docents to be recruited. Let's see, the broadband discussed costs for turning TVs on and off from fines emanating from the hearings. There will be changes on this activity forthcoming. The new resident orientation go back to the in-board meeting starting soon. In 2021, cable trouble calls were down because people didn't want technicians in their homes. This is according to a report by Paul. In 2021, broadband cost each resident $10.48 per man per month. Village YouTube subscribers increased 29.5% in 2021. High-speed internet subscribers is up 15% in 2021. The movie channel is moving to the West Coast feed, so your DVR for subscribers need to record their series recordings. Broadband is continuing to remove duplicate channel numbers. Weather Channel 75 and 475 expired February 28th. 85% of members said that they would discontinue this channel if they had to pay a 400% increase. Village Television showed several really great movies for Black History Month in February. And that's the end of my report. The next meeting is scheduled for March 21st at 1:30 p.m. Here in the boardroom and virtual.
Thank you. Next up, Director Cook, Mobility and Vehicles Committee.
Yes, the committee last met on February 2nd. The report from that meeting was given by Director Bada. The next meeting will be on April 6th at 1:30 p.m., both in the boardroom and as a virtual meeting.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Director Wayne, Security and Community Access Committee.
Thank you very much, President. It was a very interesting meeting on February 28th. The Security and Community Access Committee only meets every other month, so this isn't a new report from way back when. This is a report that's current. There were several people there who were very interesting. We have some members of our community who are vision impaired, and they showed up at the meeting to talk about issues that they have experienced. One of which is speeding down the streets, and that issue was directed to Carlos Rojas, who indicated that they have been having a campaign, let's say, using the radar to catch people who are speeding down these streets. It was also discussed by Debbie Dotson that we need more crossway signage, and she was suggesting some different signage that would be more appropriate for our community. So those were two of the events. The third one was a parking permit program for Calle Sonora. Now, most people don't understand that Calle Sonora from El Toro Road to the house, to the gatehouse on Gate 14, is our private road. It belongs to GRF. And in the past, it's been thought that that road belonged to the community at whole, not just our community. So therefore, the Whispering Springs Foundation facilities and the Regency facilities have access to their facilities from our road. And they also have access to parking on that road. So what Carlos Rojas has done is he has conducted a study over the last 6 months of vehicles that are parked on that road, which is our road, and discovered that none of them seem to be owned by our residents or guests of our residents. So with that idea in mind, it's been suggested that we have a fee for parking on our road. So the fee that's being proposed is $97.50 per year, and that fee would be absorbed at a cost of $3,982 to put up the signage, because we have to have signage there to be able to implement any kind of restrictions. That also would mean that that road would then be subject to our security department's viewing, and they're going in and tagging cars for expired registrations and abandonment, which they haven't been doing. There also seems to be RV parking there. So that would be another thing. So the idea is that we could generate an estimated $6,500 in revenue with this program, and that would be per year. So that is what we are looking at now, and maybe Carlos Rojas can tell us where we are on having that approved by GRF.
Okay. The only comment I'll make on that is any revenue that's generated is GRF revenue, not third revenue. But, okay.
Correct.
Carlos is there now. Carlos, do you want to address it?
Yes, so the next step is to move forward to the board, to the GRF board, for approval. But we do have everything in place, and we've detailed the cost out. There was comments made that they wanted more details on the initial cost. It's really just startup costs, because according to the California Vehicle Code, you do have to have certain specifications on the signs that you install to be able to enforce and issue any type of penalty or fee for anybody in violation of our rules. So we do plan on taking it to the full GRF board for approval.
Quick question, Carlos. If these are non-residents who are parking on the street and we tag them for either not paying the fee or for whatever else, how do we enforce that since they're non-resident?
Yeah, so that was the tricky part of it. So it is going to be permit parking. So we're hoping to be able to sell the parking permits ahead of time. And the facilities have indicated that they're willing to purchase a certain number of parking permits and also advertise it to their residents that are using those spaces. So in terms of actually enforcement, the only medium that we have in which to enforce it, if we have the repeat violators, will be a towing provision in our traffic regulations. So that's something that will likely have to be modified because there is a pretty extended process in our towing provisions. Because when we do towing, it's a pretty serious matter when it's inside the village. Because oftentimes they are associated with a member and there's more factors to consider. This is a little bit more straightforward on why we would be towing them. So we do have to have more of an expedited way to do that. And so we will have to do a modification to the traffic regulations with that piece. But all the fines and everything else associated with a violation already currently exists in our traffic regulations.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You're welcome.
Questions?
Yeah, I just have a
Director
question.
Raintosa.
Are we talking about any parking during the day as well, or is this overnight parking? Because it appears that some of those vehicles sort of live there. They're day and night.
Correct. It's just going to be, it's just permit parking only, and then no overnight parking, and that's all. And we are going to do a 30-day grace period, and we've put out signs already just to kind of trying to prepare folks for it. And we got some compliance right away where people stopped parking there, but now you're starting to see them come back because they know there's no enforcement being done at the moment. But we do want to be good partners with those facilities, and we are going to do a 30-day grace period, but we are going to explain that piece of the enforcement. So they'll be required according to our rules to move those vehicles within a certain period.
One thing we hope to accomplish with this is to eliminate the debris and trash that is thrown out on side of the road on the side next to or behind Stater Brothers. So that is one issue that we hope will be alleviating with this new procedure.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Questions?
Next meeting, April 25th.
Thank
23rd.
you. Thank you, Carlos. Next up is
You're welcome.
Disaster Preparedness Task Force, Director Raintosa.
Yes, the task force met on January 25th. That was our quarterly meetings. The primary emphasis on that was revitalizing, reviving, and retraining for the good neighbor captains that we use during emergencies. The next meeting is scheduled for March 29th, 2022 at 9:30, both here in the boardroom and as a virtual meeting.
And next up is the report of the Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings, Director Frankel.
The committee and therefore the board or the trial meets on the third Wednesday. So tomorrow we have 4 violations scheduled for review. The last meeting was obviously last month and there were 4 violations.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next up is the GRF Strategic Planning Committee. The report was originally going to be given by Director Lewis, but he had to leave for a medical issue. So the committee met on March 7th, and the next meeting is May 2nd, and it'll be here in the boardroom as well as a virtual meeting. All right, Revenue Resources Ad Hoc Committee, Director McCary.
Thank you, President Montenegro. Chair Harden announced at the meeting that this committee has been disbanded due to rising costs, so no further meetings will be scheduled for this committee, or the committee is disbanded.
Okay. And last but not least, Information Technology Advisory Committee, Director Laws.
Yes, the Information Technology Advisory Committee, or ITAC, last met on March 4th. The ITAC is currently working with purchasing and the consulting firm to finalize the contract, which will hopefully be completed and signed within the next week or so, after which work on the analysis and design phases for the finance modules can begin. And the next meeting of ITAC is this Friday, March 18th.
Thank you, sir. All right, future agenda items. Anybody? Future agenda items? Director Laws.
Just the resident suggestion program that we had talked about earlier this month. I think we'd agreed that we'll talk about that next board meeting.
Okay. All righty. We'll now go to director comments, and I'm going to start on my left. Director Laws, you're first.
I have one question for staff. The operating rules, that big thick thing that's online, was last updated June 2020. Is there a process to have that updated more regularly than that?
Yes, we have that on our list of things to do as soon as our new staff gets up to speed and ready to take that assignment on.
Okay, great, thanks. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Director Cook.
No further comment.
Director Franco.
No comment.
Director Engdahl.
No comment, thank you.
Director McCary.
Thank you, President Musnick. With the daylight savings time, we got an extra hour of some more time for daylight. So just as a reminder, people to still be very careful when you're walking in the evenings. We still have people speeding, so want to make sure everybody's safe. So take it slow with this extra daylight time. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Jarrett.
No comment. Thank
Director
you.
Rain Sosak.
No comment, thank you.
Director Wayne.
What Annie didn't mention is we lost an hour of sleep to get that extra hour of light.
Yesterday was National Nap Day, so if you missed yesterday.
Oh, I missed it. You didn't tell me. No
Okay.
further comment.
Director, CEO Foster.
Nothing, thank you.
Corporate Secretary Estrada. And Michaela, I don't know your last name, so I'll just say,
No comment.
okay. And with that, it is 12:26, and we will adjourn the meeting and meet upstairs for the closed session. Thank you, everyone. We're still on air.
Is there a break between now and the next meeting, or is
Well,
it a working
we'll
lunch again?
reconvene at 1 o'clock.
Okay, 1 o'clock sounds great. Thank you.
Okay?
I thought that clock was right.